Hello there, it's Andy Parks from the Washington Times, and welcome to February, another month of what's Joe Biden doing in the White House. All that's new this week, and I'll talk with Pentagon military and foreign affairs reporter Ben Wolfgang. But first, as a listener to my podcast, you qualify to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Simply go to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Joe Biden and his administration is baffled as to why so many illegals are headed to the U.S. You've got to be kidding, right, Joe? You open the borders and allow millions to come on in, and now you're baffled as to why they're here? What is this guy doing, watching cartoons all day? Jen Psaki, the president's press secretary, while responding to Fox News and Judge Jeanine, who claimed the administration is soft on crime, spoke out and said she did not even know what that meant. What? Has she looked around the country at all? Has she seen what people are getting away with while this administration sits back and watches? Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Now we hear Joe Biden is going to be making the rounds. He's headed to New York City. He's going to sit down with the mayor, and he's going to discuss the crime. Okay, so what will become of that? Nothing. Then there's the Supreme Court. Biden says the new justice would have to be a black woman. You know, just like the success he had with Kamala Harris when he demanded a black woman as VP. 76% of those surveyed at an ABC poll this past week said, how about the best person for the job? By the way, many of those surveyed were Democrats. Locally, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan doesn't like the liberal media describing him as a moderate Republican anti-Trumper. Well, Larry, if the shoe fits. You remember former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and Larry Hogan working together to take out Trump before the election? I do. You see, Hogan has his eyes on a White House run in 2024, and now he can't have the image of being an anti-Trumper. Save your time and save your money, Larry. The Russia-Ukraine conflict continues to heat up. And now more from Washington Times Pentagon military and foreign affairs reporter Ben Wolfgang. Hi, Ben.
Hey, Andy, good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. Before I get into your story here, I was talking with our own Charlie Hurd about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and he says he doubts if many Americans could find Ukraine on a map. You think that's true?
I actually do think that's probably true to a large degree. And it raises an interesting question about sort of the level of actual American interests that are at play in Ukraine. I think when you hear folks, the more hawkish Republicans and, more traditional foreign policy establishment types, and, I tend to kind of agree with a lot of this, that this is about something bigger than Ukraine. It's about maintaining the post-World War II order. And that if Russia can just start rewriting borders in Eastern Europe, or China could maybe try to do the same thing with Taiwan, for example, you have to take a stand at some point for those kinds of principles. Now, having said that, those principles are certainly at stake, but when it comes to an actual national security interest for American citizens, for you and I talking this morning in Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine, there's not much of one, frankly. And so I think it is fair to say that Americans probably aren't necessarily that familiar with Ukraine, where it is, the dynamics that are at play, the borders that are in dispute, the separatist enclaves that Russia is trying to lay claim to. I think Charlie's largely right. That's not something that's really on the minds of women and men in America.
We're sending more equipment as we speak. Is it more for show and less for go?
I think so. From the military point of view, folks that I talk to in the Pentagon believe that the longer this goes on, the chances of an actual full-scale Russian invasion go down. Just because, look, as you well know, when you're talking about war and conflict, armed battle, the element of surprise to some degree is important. Moving quickly before your enemy has a chance to really fortify themselves is important. So the longer that this goes on, I think the actual chances of an invasion become less and less. And people in the Pentagon know that. Officials at NATO and certainly in Ukraine are aware of that. So I think now, yes, there's a certain showmanship, not to dismiss the real possibility of war, but there's a showmanship aspect to this that the West, NATO, and particularly the Biden administration, quite frankly, for a president who's been sort of bogged down with all kinds of domestic problems and the debacle of a withdrawal from Afghanistan, a lot of things that he would like to get bumped off the headlines, off the front pages in favor of the U.S. taking a tough stand against Russia by sending equipment, by sending potentially more forces to Eastern Europe. So yes, I think there's certainly an element of show to this, and from a political perspective, probably smart politics by the Biden administration.
Peeved Putin complains West ignored demands as Blinken and Lavrov confer. If Putin doesn't get his way, isn't that a good thing?
Now, this is some real showmanship here, Andy, because Russia, as everyone remembers, put out this quite insane list of demands, a number of weeks, I guess over a month ago now, about capping NATO expansion, no more U.S. weapons in Eastern Europe, all kinds of requests that, frankly, there was never any chance of the U.S. or any chance of NATO agreeing to. And so, but for whatever reason, the Biden administration sort of played ball with it, met with the Russians, and issued formal written responses to those requests. And now Putin comes out yesterday and acts angry, frustrated, almost sort of shocked, stunned that the U.S. would just deny these very reasonable requests that the Kremlin had put into writing. So this is showmanship of the highest order. Everybody knew this was never going to happen. This was a non-starter from day one. Putin knew that it was a non-starter from day one. But I think he wanted to buy himself some time, which he's done. But now it's kind of getting to put up or shut up time for him, because you can only keep 125,000 people stationed on the front lines of Ukraine for so long. So he can come out and act as angry and peeved, quite frankly, as he wants to. But eventually something's got to give here.
He says the U.S. is pretending to care about Ukraine's security as part of a larger plan to hurt Russia. Could that be true?
I don't think so. I mean, look, to a degree, I guess one could certainly make the argument that the U.S. has an interest in limiting Russia's influence in that part of the world. It's no secret that Putin wants to establish or grow some type of sphere of Russian influence that stretches into Central Asia. He's got that to a degree already with countries like Belarus and Kazakhstan that are closely allied with Russia. So perhaps, one could make the argument the U.S. does have a vested interest in trying to limit that Russian sphere of influence in that part of the world strategically. But in terms of are we taking overt measures to quote unquote hurt Russia? I don't see any evidence of that. I mean, we have a long standing through multiple administrations here, security cooperation agreement with Ukraine. That's involved a lot of money, billions of dollars, a lot of weapons, a lot of anti-tank missiles, a lot of military, joint military drills and what have you, again, stretching back over administrations of both parties. So the simplest answer is usually right. I think in this case, for the United States, the simplest answer is we think the best way to deter Russian aggression is to stand in solidarity with Ukraine. And so far, at least, that seems to be working.
Okay, Ben, thanks for the update. Appreciate it very much.
Good talking to you, Andy.
And finally today, the Wisconsin spice company known as Penzeys Spices has lost 40,000 customers as a result of the company's CEO labeling all Republicans as racist. And he's now resorted to asking remaining customers, Democrats, to please help the company out by buying gift cards and more spices. What's that new saying? Get woke, go broke, too bad. Thanks for joining me today, and remember to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Go to washingtontimes.com/handy. You'll get 24/7 digital access to the Washington Times at 50% off. Again, go to washingtontimes.com/ANDY. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.